All right, I may lose it in this video, so you have been warned. But I have been sent a who has the largest fan base in the United States? That's the question. And then how many fans does everybody else have? I believe the company is Altamore Collins. Now, I don't know if this is real. I really don't. It looks like a lot of, in terms of, I don't know if this group has done any data or anything like that. Just grabbing stuff from here and there can be a dangerous thing. It's not really what you want to do. But I'm just going to tell you that one of the slides that is being presented, the presentation is very nice in this thing. Says the top 16 teams account for 50% of all college football fans. That may be, I'm not sure. And goes on to say, with college football's highly concentrated fan base, these 16 teams drive much of the media attention, yada, yada. Listen, they have Georgia as the number one, two, three, the number 12 fan base in terms of size in college football. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't normally do this. I don't normally not normally cuss on these. That is total and utter bullshit in every single way. And here are the teams that they have in front of Georgia. All right, stick with me here. Ohio State. I think there are more Ohio State fans than there are Georgia, so I'm not going to go down that path. Number two, Notre Dame. Well, Georgia had more fans at the game between the two schools, but both times they played, the time it was in Athens, Georgia had, the normal amount of Georgia fans in the crowd. When it was at South Bend, Georgia had about 50%. So to say there's more Notre Dame fans than there are Georgia fans, that's hard to believe. Number two, and I will be discussing this a lot, the television ratings do not show that Notre Dame is a larger fan base than Georgia. Not anymore. Texas. I think Texas could have more fans than Georgia. That's because it's a larger state, a larger school, just math. Okay. Penn State. Uh, Maybe. They're probably in the same universe. I mean, Pennsylvania is a larger state than Georgia. Penn State is a larger school than Georgia. I don't know. Michigan. Same as the Big Ten schools that are not Ohio State, these two being specifically two of them, they're in the same universe as Georgia. They both have very large fan bases. Florida. The qualm I had with this is these people are saying there's 4 million Georgia fans. You trying to be for real, man? 4 million Georgia fans? Nobody at Georgia thinks there's 4 million Georgia fans. If you want the Stetson book that's signed, the Double Dogs with Stetson's signature, you better get on it. I'm showing you this now, okay? The link is down below. There, I have an extremely limited number of those. Extremely limited. Georgia doesn't have 4 million fans. Georgia has probably 10 million fans, maybe 15. Well, I think 15 is high, but anywhere from 10 to 11 million fans, that's easy. Saying that the Gators have almost double the amount of fans as Georgia is completely delusional and not based in reality. If the Gators had double the amount of fans as the Dogs, they would sell out their home games. They would have as many fans in Jacksonville as Georgia does, which is, I have to tell you, not always the case. Anyway, Alabama has more fans than Georgia. I don't. I don't think any SEC school necessarily has more Georgia fans than Georgia. Texas A&M could, Alabama could, maybe LSU. I don't, but not Alabama. No, the thing that sticks out about these that are so stupid are the next few. That Oregon has more fans than Georgia. No, that's just not true in any way. So nice try. You made yourself look stupid. Wisconsin, no, not true. You look stupid. USC, no. Okay. Why can I so quickly say no? Okay. Let's just stick with Oregon for now. And this guy's got Syracuse in his top 16. No one in Syracuse cares about Syracuse. You've got Syracuse having more fans than Auburn and Tennessee. What are you talking about? This is so stupid. You look stupid. You don't look stupid. Like, this is nicely manicured and so forth, but it doesn't matter how nice it looks if you're just completely wrong. It's just not based in reality. I can't tell you what is a fan? Is a fan someone who goes to the game? Because if it's only about going to a game, then there are programs that have more fans than Georgia, but they're certainly not Oregon and Florida, right? I mean, they're not Notre Dame. So that's part of, if you go to a game, you are 100% a fan. This is the bourbon whiskey discussion, okay? It's based on who is watching, who is buying, who is going to games. When the Gators play a bowl game outside of the state, how many fans go? Answer: not many. Not many. We've seen that over time. When Notre Dame has a national fan base, they do. They 100% have a national fan base. Just that no one watches them play TV like they used to, or like the SEC. The SEC has become the largest brand. In, the SEC in the United States has become the largest brand. Now, I don't want to overdo this now. The NFL is clearly the largest brand in sports. I would argue that probably the NBA is number two, and Major League Baseball is probably in front of the SEC. Not certainly. So the thing about it is, though, that who's a bigger deal in Georgia? Just as this is a topic for another day, probably. But are the Braves a bigger deal than Georgia? Well, when you talk to the people in Atlanta television, I thought they would immediately say the Braves. They don't. They don't immediately say the Braves. Now, the Braves are as big a deal in the South as anybody else in terms of professional sports. They are the largest thing. Are the Braves a bigger deal than Alabama and Alabama? No, they're not. Are the Braves a bigger deal than South Carolina or Clemson in South Carolina? No, they are not. But they are ever present. And in Georgia, where Atlanta is, and I know we're talking about the Cobb County Braves here. I get that. But let's just say that, let's leave the Cobb County part out for now. Are the Braves a bigger deal in Georgia than the Dogs? No, they're not. So they're not necessarily that they're similar. Like, are the are I'm trying to think of other baseball teams. Like, are the Dodgers a bigger deal than SC? No question. Like, there's no question. In LA, it goes Lakers, Dodgers, and then like everybody else, Rams, Chargers. And that's strange because, you know, in Atlanta, it goes, if you listen to people and you go by the actual numbers, it probably goes Dogs, Braves, Falcons. Then probably SEC schools, and then Hawks, and then whatever else, and then like Tucker High School, and then Tech. So there's, but the notion here that you want to say Ohio State's got a bigger fan base than Georgia. I'm I'm not arguing that because I've seen Ohio State, and Ohio State has tremendous fan support. They have a huge watching audience. You want to say Texas has a larger fan base than Georgia? I would say that is probably true, but I'm not sure. I don't think you can make the same argument there necessarily. I mean, people don't watch Texas the same way they watch Georgia. Now that could change. You want to say Michigan is bigger than Georgia? You want to say Michigan? Michigan and Ohio State. There's a reason those schools are called the Big Ten because they have huge schools. Georgia's not always been that way. Georgia's only in the last, I don't know, 25 years, had a school that's over 30,000 kids. Um, but like you've got Syracuse in this thing. Nobody gives a shit about Syracuse. No one cares about Syracuse. No one. You've got Oregon in here. I mean, Oregon is a national brand. They are not the brand that Georgia is. You've got them with 5.5 million fans. That may be an accurate. I mean, that may be based in reality. They very well could be 5 million Oregon fans. There are not 4 million Georgia fans. They're just not. I mean, when Georgia plays Arkansas State on television, 2 million people watch, and that's a trash game. Okay, when Georgia plays Florida, I mean, Georgia Bama, it's never fewer than 10 million people watching that game. You're saying there's 4 million Georgia fans? Like, it just is not reality based. So I don't know where people come up with this stuff. Who are the five biggest, brands, fan base? I don't. The problem here too is like fan base and brands. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish between those two things because they kind of everything gets kind of mingled together. I would say in the SEC, the two largest slash biggest brands are Alabama and Georgia. Okay. With that said, there are way more Alabama fans than there are Auburn. There are way more Georgia fans than there are South Carolina. You know, and that again comes down to South Carolina as a state that has half the population of Georgia, and it has a legitimate competitor in state. It's also got North Carolina right. There are a lot of North Carolina people in South Carolina, and there are a lot of Georgia people in South Carolina. There are not a lot of Gators. There are not a lot of Tennessee folks. There are some. There are some. There are more Tennessee folks in South Carolina than there are Gators. There are more Auburn people in Atlanta area than there are probably anywhere else in the South that's not in Alabama. There are a ton of Alabama people in Atlanta. There are a ton of after that, I would say it goes in Atlanta that are non-Atlanta folks. I would say it goes Auburn one would be my guess. Now, I mean, it usually was Auburn. It may be Alabama now, but it's Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee are in that group, and I would say Clemson is a lot in there too, but they're not as big as the other ones are in terms of size. After that, um, it becomes a little trickier because I think Bama, Auburn, Tennessee, Clemson, there are a lot of them in Atlanta. There's plenty of them in Atlanta, I should say. But you can't in Atlanta if you drive, it depends on the part of Atlanta. If you drive in the suburbs of Atlanta and you're just driving around and looking at cars and you go 2 minutes without seeing somebody with a Georgia G on their car, if you drive 2 minutes, I'd be a little surprised by that. In Charleston, South Carolina, if you drive around for an hour, you'll see a Georgia flag, you'll see a Georgia G. If you drive around Jacksonville, you definitely will see Georgia stuff. If you drive around Charlotte, you'll see it. Uh, Probably it's somewhat similar to the Charleston test. Um, Obviously Aiken, which is basically Augusta. Greenville, you've got a fair amount of Georgia people up there because it's not that far from Athens. It's not that far from Atlanta. Knoxville, there are Georgia people. There's plenty of Georgia people in Tennessee and not in Nashville particularly. And they're just everywhere. I know this stuff because my job and my livelihood depends on seeing where people live because of the credit cards, and they are all over the. When people have bought this, when we're sending double dogs out, Ryan and I, or my mother and I, or my wife and I are putting the labels on and all this stuff. This person's from Hawaii. This person's from Montana. This person's from Idaho. I mean, a lot of people from obviously Georgia, but it's stunning how many, it probably in terms of where people are, it's Atlanta, Georgia, and then like Florida, Carolinas, Alabama, and that's where the Georgia base is. It's that group, but that's millions upon millions of people. To say there are 4 million Georgia fans and to say there are 11 million Ohio State fans is beyond delusional. That's not based in reality. Ohio State does not have 3 times the amount of fans of Georgia. They just don't. It's a great school. It's in terms of, well, it's not a better school than Georgia, but it's a great football program and all that stuff. But they don't have 3 times the amount of fans as Georgia. They just don't. They got a lot of fans. Now they got a lot of fans. Georgia's got a lot of fans. Texas got a lot of fans, but Ohio State doesn't have 3 times the amount of fans of Georgia. So I saw this. I really felt triggered by it. As you can see, I had to say something. It was ridiculous. Make sure you're downloading the DoorDash app. 50% off using the code DAWG. DAWG, limited time only, terms apply. But I just saw this, and to anybody that thinks that Oregon, Wisconsin, SC have more fans than Georgia, or that the Gators have more fans than Georgia, bitch, you are delusional. Have a good day.